Howdy, folks. Thanks for tuning in today. Hope y'all are doing okay. Well, everything is stupid. Everything is stupid. Today in Louisville, Kentucky, the city officials have designated, or have called for, rather, I think 9 p.m. curfew till 6:30 a.m. for the next 72 hours. Louisville, if you're unaware, is the city where Breonna Taylor was killed by police. And I'm choosing my words carefully there. Now, okay, I'm going to try to get through this without interrupting myself. Here's the allegations that came out very early. The cops were at the wrong house, and the boyfriend responded as one would to a home invasion. It was a no-knock warrant that was misexecuted. They were looking for someone that they already had in custody. And with all that information, I use the term loosely, I was pretty upset. I thought that not only the cops might not necessarily need to be in trouble because the warrant they were handed a warrant but for the wrong address, but that the people they report to should have been in trouble. And the reports were that they showed up when someone came to the door. They just started shooting. The police did. Now, after, Breonna Taylor, I believe her death was in March. And everything kind of came to a head at the same time that George Floyd's death happened. And I've gone over my opinions on that in detail in these videos. I do think that George Floyd, that Officer Chauvin and the officers around him, whose names I do not know, I do think that they grossly mishandled the situation. My opinion. I know that there have been some reports coming out that George Floyd was high on fentanyl to the point that if the medical examiner didn't know his name, he would have called it an OD, not a homicide. But there were 4 cops there. I do believe that 4 cops could have got one dude into the back of a cop car once he's handcuffed, in my opinion. Anyway, where I was wanting to go today is the information about the Breonna Taylor death just kept getting debunked. The narrative was established very early on by media and anonymous sources or people that weren't necessarily in the know. Then facts came out that were counter to the narrative, but nothing was done to change that. And when you've got that many people riled up, angry, which may or may not have been justified, and then you pull the rug out from under them, telling them that the whole reason why they're irritated is a lie, you're going to cause problems. If you don't pull the rug out from under them and tell them that they're 100% justified in everything they're doing, you're causing problems. So I don't know what the answer is there, but it's not what they did. So here's the facts that I know. And should anything be late breaking or whatnot, I will be more than happy to retract or make an addendum to my statements as needed. So here's what I know. The warrant was lawfully obtained, as is like basically every other warrant in the city of Louisville. I'm sure there's somewhere someone might have a vendetta and try to go after somebody, but that was not the case. Another fact, the cops showed up at the right address because Breonna Taylor's name was actually on the warrant, as well as her boyfriend. I believe his name was on the warrant, but I do know that her name was on the warrant. It was a no-knock warrant. The police knocked and announced that they were the police. Now, whether or not that can be heard when people are clamoring up and down the stairs, not going to say. I think no-knock warrants are a crock, personally. And I think midnight raids on people's houses are a crock. I've got a whole list of opinions on that. Then one of the officers was shot. So all of the officers started shooting back. There were 4 officers, my understanding, at her residence. One of them is being indicted on wanton endangerment, I believe. Wanton or reckless. Because he was shooting from outside the apartment to inside the apartment with a handgun, not seeing his target clearly. All 4 of that guy getting charged for whatever the DA decides to throw at him. They know the evidence better than I do. They know what charges they can get to stick. So that's kind of where I'm okay with leaving that. When Breonna Taylor was struck and hit, well, first off, both occupants, Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend, were hit by police fire. My understanding is that her boyfriend was not hurt badly by gunfire, that he was still up, competent, and capable to move and take care of himself and coherent. My understanding. Breonna Taylor was mortally wounded. My understanding is that EMTs were dispatched. I don't know if the cops kept Breonna Taylor alive or she stayed alive till paramedics got there. Cops escorted Breonna Taylor out into the ambulance. The boyfriend was left alone for 17-ish minutes total in their apartment while the cops were escorting Breonna Taylor to the ambulance and getting the officer that had been wounded taken care of, things like that. Breonna Taylor died. There was no evidence found, but there's a 17-minute window for someone to go through an apartment and be flushing and dumping and whatever else they did. So here's where I come down on all this. People that will sensationalize the news in someone who's 100% innocent was murdered by a cop in cold blood in their house for no reason, and then we find out these other things. And I'm not going to say that the cops were justified or not, okay? Because I'll tell you this much, I've watched some of their training videos. There was a guy in Texas somewhere that had organized some protests, legit protests. And so the cops against the police, and the cops asked this guy to come participate in some of their training drills. The gist of it was shoot, no shoot scenarios. And what it boiled down to was the guy was given 3 scenarios on, dealing with a suspect or a situation that may escalate, may de-escalate. Do you pull the trigger or not? My city's cop. The one cop. It's awesome. Do you shoot or not shoot in these situations? The guy was given 3 situations, explained what he was kind of walking into beforehand. He got one of them right. The first one, he got shot. Air quotes. All they used is basically a glorified cap gun. Just makes noise, no bullet. The second time, he shot someone that was unarmed because he was kind of on edge. The third time, he managed to get it right. So, when people blast the cops, first off, you weren't there. Second off, you didn't see the small indications that they did. Was this person reaching for their waistline? Was this person fidgety? Was this person not keeping their hands plainly visible? Were they giving signs of nervousness or giving the cop reason to be suspicious of them? I don't know. I'm not saying the cops were or were not right. But I will say this, I tend to put more faith in what's going on, or what we find out after statements, after the evidence can be analyzed, after the dust settles and we figure out more things. Because there's a ton of fake news, false facts, whatever, that had flown around about this case 2 months after, and turns out all of it that I've found has been wrong. Now, a couple videos ago, I told you that that I'd heard rumors from a friend, but highly reliable sources in my opinion, that Breonna Taylor had actually been let go from one of the area hospitals that she worked in for a while because she was stealing narcotics from the hospital. I can't prove that. I did do a little bit of research, and what I could find is that Breonna Taylor had worked at not just one hospital, but 2 area hospitals, and then went into being a paramedic. My sister-in-law works for the same county's ambulance team, and she found out some things. I don't know the full extent of it. My wife and I, we don't get to see each other very much due to our basically 180 degrees off work schedule. I work nights, she works days. So when we talk to each other, it's not about things that don't concern us. We're spending time with each other. So anyway, but there were some things that my sister-in-law had found out working for that same ambulance team about Breonna Taylor that we'll just say did not paint her in the best of lights. I don't know all the details, but, and I'm not saying that she's sparing the dead, and I don't think that we should do that, but facts are facts. And, you know, if I were to die tomorrow, and it come out that I was, and the fact was that I was a low-down, dirty, wife-beating liar, why should people lie about what I am just because I died? If I died tomorrow in questionable circumstances, but I'm an upstanding guy, I do my best to take care of my wife and my kids and my family, I go to work, all that, regardless of the questionable circumstances, that should rise to the top. So, the truth matters. And right after George Floyd's death, I had to be in Louisville on a Friday night at an emergency room. Long story, not going into it. Well, anyway, when we're getting ready to leave, my wife had been messaging her sister, and she's trying to, you know, she's a paramedic, so, you know, one of my kids was in the hospital in the ER. Thankfully, it wasn't a big deal. So my wife was messaging her, just, you know, kind of keeping her posted and whatnot. And then, well, we're getting turned loose. You need to stay at the hospital. Why would we stay at the hospital? We want to go home. We're tired. It's about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Maybe a little later, because it was middle of summer. And she's like, there's riots downtown. Y'all need to be safe. No, we can get out of downtown. No, there's riots downtown. We walk out to the lobby up toward the exit. There's a cop standing there, and we're watching the TV in the lobby, and they're trying to flip over, the rioters are trying to flip over an ambulance, and I'm like, wow. So then we get out Google Maps, and it turns out they're just a couple blocks away in the wrong direction. So I can get out of Louisville, and that's exactly what I did, quickly. All the downtown businesses, I had to go downtown a couple weeks ago. All the downtown businesses, their windows are boarded up. There was a lot of damage. There was actually a restaurant that went out of business due to the double whammy that is COVID and these riots, where, you know, they hadn't made any money, and then you go in there and tear up all their furniture and their counters and raid their kitchens and everything else. They hadn't made any money in a while. The grants for COVID have been, let's just say they haven't lived up to expectations to the majority of small businesses that were legitimately shuttered during all this. So I'm not saying that people don't have a right to be upset. I'm not saying that there doesn't need to be police reform. I'd say there does need to be police reform. I disagree 100% with everything Black Lives Matter is putting forward, but I think there needs to be police reform. I think there's a lot of things that you can do and change in the way law enforcement happens and the way that law enforcement is treated and trained that will not only help them better protect communities that they're in, but when a situation like this comes up, whether the cop was justified or not, people will trust fully that that justice will be served and that the truth will be found out. So, that's what I've got to say today. I'm going to jump off of here. I got to deal with some stuff. So, y'all stay safe. Thanks for tuning in for another Cruise with Smooth. See you next time.